we are live.
We are live with coverage from the 2024 C2E2 Chicago Comics Convention.
Absolutely. So this episode, we're actually just going to dedicate the entire thing talking about the experience, starting from
Who we met, the memories we made,
4 o'clock when we woke up to 4 o'clock when we went back to sleep.
It was a full-on, it was a full day that, you know, the memories will last a lifetime.
It was an adventure. So this one is C2E2 2024.
Arcade.
We'll fix that in post. So are we not going with what my suggestion, R2C2E2?
R2C2E2. Well, that could be the name of it. Sure.
Okay, that's close enough to clever.
Awesome. Well, it has to be R2C2E2 2024.
I don't think there's anyone. All right, if you guys want to make the leap, anyway. From the very beginning, we got on the road.
Yes. So, okay, we met up at the shop at 5:30
a.m. I was not aware that there was a 5:30 a.m. until this week.
So it already started with
like fun.
A day of learning. Mm-hmm. Grabbed some last minute items as far as packing stuff up because we knew we were going to be in it for the haul, and we drove from Fort Wayne to Chicago.
The arcade boys are going to Chicago.
The arcade crew going to Chicago,
and it was already blessed. We took Craig and I went last year, and then my brother and Craig's new business partner Austin. It was his first con. It was my good friend Jeff's first con. It was both of our good friends and friend of the shop Brad's first con. So they were all seeing this for the first time, and what a first con to have. What an extravaganza. This was really, Craig and I talked about it. This wasn't just a great con. It was really one of the best days of either of our lives. Absolutely. I mean, it really was everything that could happen. We put it that we won Chicago Comic Con.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no other way to actually say it. Like, so
it's a little bit competition, but if it was, you would have won.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I always say.
Now, I thought that we left a little bit too early, but Craig wanted to get there's an exclusive at the Tiny Onion.
We left
booth.
early. We left too early. We did.
No. That's not. We're not airing our grievances. I mean, if it turns out I was right, that's fine. No, but because
so there's a time change also if you're listening from somewhere else. From Indiana, it's only 3 hours, but once you cross or get close to that Indiana state line, we switch. That is the line where we switch from Eastern time to Central. Mm-hmm. So. Well, if you drive 3 hours, it's actually like it only took 2. So we did have that going for us on the way there.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we'd have left it 4:30.
As it was, we arrived we got our tickets, we got through security with an hour and a half to spare.
Yes. And
so that means that we stood in line for an hour and a half.
Amongst all the other people just as excited as we were.
Yes, but I was going on 5 hours of sleep, and but it was great because by that time you're surrounded by there's a guy with the TARDIS next to you, Greedo's over there. Look, the whole place looks like the cantina from Mos Eisley in the best possible way. There was a whole group of people trying to lift up Thor's hammer. One of them could. I did not get to meet him, but he did wield Mighty Mjolnir. But then we wanted to get there that early because there was the
Tiny Onion.
Tiny Onion had a booth, and they had an exclusive comic of Something's Killing the Children.
36.
36.
Martin Simmons had done it, the cover, and they had an exclusive C2E2 Department of Truth #1, which we saw that today. It's completely in red ink, only red ink for the entire thing. Like all of the,
and somehow it works. It's a really beautiful presentation. And then the Something's Killing the Children. You got a couple of them. There's 250 made with a beautiful spot foil cover. I do regret not having gotten that because they all bought that. They were standing in line, and already as soon as we walked in, that line was long for the Tiny Onion booth. And James Sinney wasn't even there. While they did that, I had the map out right down the aisle. Was one of my heroes, my absolute all-time favorite comics artist, and the reason that I'm here today as the comics fan that I am is Jose Luis Garcia Lopez made a rare appearance all the way from Argentina, and I went there and they were giving out, not giving out, they had prints. He had 200 prints of the classic DC lineup with all the heroes that. When I was a kid, he would do these big murals of all the DC heroes, and it's how I figured out who a lot of them were, because if I didn't know who the names were, I would hunt my comics and find them until I found out who they were.
And if you saw those characters like in the late 70s and 80s, he's probably the one.
Yeah,
that, like the promotional work and stuff like that.
He did the model sheets for every mainline DC character. So every other artist had to follow essentially that
which they're tributing him in these next few months.
Yes, they're going to do six variant covers of those original model sheets that he had.
They're cool.
Yeah, Flash. The Trinity, Flash, Green Arrow, and Shazam are all getting Captain Marvel are all getting. You're going to see those original model sheets, of which I had them. You know, I had them when I was a kid. They were released as part of the Superpowers promotion, and it was just awesome. You know, to see it again, but to meet the man, and it's cool when you meet these people, and it's like you look exactly like I thought you would, and it's just beautiful. But he was like this small, gentle man, and I told him like how much he meant to me, and that I think he was one of the best artists of all time. And he scrutinized. So I gave him a copy of a DC. It was a DC team up book, and it was Halo and Batman, but it wasn't an Outsiders book. And he scrutinized the heck out of that cover. I don't think he thought that he drew it.
Really?
It's definitely not an iconic one.
Sure.
But I love Halo and I love Batman, and I had it, so I'm like, well, that's the one I wanted to sign. But he signed it, and then I told him what he meant to me, and he seemed very touched, and it was great. That's and then awesome. I came back, and you guys were still in line. That's how long the line was.
Yeah.
And Jose Luis he had a line, but no, nothing like James Tynion commands lines,
Yeah. Well, an exclusivity there. I mean, usually. That's the only time, disclosure, that's the only time we played that game the entire con.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we didn't try to do, we didn't go for exclusive books. We didn't go for that type of experience, which I was going to touch on that a little bit. And kind of the outlook when we go to C2E2 is a little different than what it is, I imagine, is like what regular people do. We're going from the perspective of the store to, kind of network as well. Mm-hmm. And talk to the creators, yes, but you gain relationships, and hey, maybe someday they're going to do a cover for us for one of our books and things it's a different type of
and this year was a lot more of that, and you did a great job of that. I think we made some great contacts. I did a great job of stumbling nervously over my words and geeking out at creators from the last 20 and 30 years, and it was I think we both did great in our respective roles. So we'll just see which one pays off.
Yeah,
and also of that, but speaking of that variant that you were in line for, that's because Something Is Killing the Children is like one of your your books. It's one of it was one of the first things I found out about you was you got me to read it, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. This guy James Tynion is pretty awesome. So it was part of the fun, but and we don't wait for CGC witnesses or anything like that.
Yeah.
When I have people sign the books, I usually have them ask if they can sign it to me.
It's going in my box. It's my kid's problem.
Yep. Yeah, It's going to either my kid who's going to be named Shane or some poor schmo named Shane.
Some other person named Shane
that
with a
also
Y.
spells it like an asshole. Yeah. So then we went from there to basically straight to Artist Alley.
Yeah. So we had a few different missions. And throughout, so we had...
Yes, we did.
We went... So if for those of you who don't know, just kind of lay it out, just the whole thing. It's at McCormick Center in Chicago.
Which, by the looks of it, is where they used to build Zeppelins?
It's insane. Yes, massive. So legitimately, you could probably fit 2 or 3 Walmarts inside of the convention.
Yeah. It's like the airplane hangar where they build other airplane hangars. It's just a giant cavernous building.
And there's 2 sides to it, and one side is that size, and that's just to filter the traffic through. And then the other side of that is where the actual
and a great part of that is if you are a cosplayer, and there were some tremendous cosplayers,
Absolutely.
some great jobs, but people would come out and the first line, you had to check your weapons.
Right.
And they said, check your weapons. And I can only imagine how amazing every cosplayer felt when check your weapons, and you just swell with pride. By the end of the day, by the way, that was check your props.
Right.
And it's like, okay, these guys are over this. And then the second one is a bit more thorough. It's a magnetic scan or an X-ray.
Yes.
And we were always fine. Craig kept getting stopped because he was carrying all of our books in his suitcase. So
they're like, "What's in here?" I'm like, "Comic books." Like, any weapons? I'm like, that depends on how you look at them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
words are power.
I can give a lot of nasty paper cuts.
So Craig didn't bring as many books. I brought about 20, and 10 of them were from my favorite current working cover artist, who is not Adam Hughes, was Pablo Villalobos, who
Yes.
I think
that's where we went second, honestly.
Yeah, well, and it was like, so we had a mission. We were going to go through everything.
No, we split a little bit because I think you went somewhere. I went to Jeff DeCal, and you went somewhere, and we met at Villalobos.
Villalobos was almost catty cornered. You could see him from DeCal's booth, yeah. And that was a lot of it. Like, we had a plan. We're going to go through these, and then we'll come back once we know where everybody's at. And it really ended up being more like, we kept seeing these people that we love, and it wasn't going to be like, well, we'll come back to them. It was like, nope, we're going right there. And when I saw Pablo Villalobos, I just beelined over there. And again,
our hand was forced almost within 30 to 45 minutes to where we had to drop stuff back at the car because we were just full up.
Yes. So Pablo Villalobos' thing alone, he had prints, and anybody who's seen this guy's cover art, it's next level. It's as good as comic art gets, and he has his own particular style. Very much the heir to Adam Hughes, I think, and I mean that in the best way, because he is 100% his own artist, his own man. But there's very much that vein. But he had prints, and he had graded comics, and then I had 10 comics myself.
Yeah.
10, and I gave them to him, and I just told him that I think you're the best artist currently working, and he was very touched. He was very, very kind. My card actually declined because I was using it in Chicago for the first time. My bank thought it was fraud. And his guy told him that, and he said, well, I'm going to finish signing these, and then we'll figure that out. Just a great guy.
Yeah.
And so the funny story about that is, though, I used a different card. After that was done, I got a call from the first card, and everything went through, so I was charged twice. So I had to go back to my current comic hero, Pablo Villalobos, and ask him personally to refund one of my cards. Again, he was so kind, so forthcoming. He was like, I haven't done this, but we'll figure it out. Great guy. And then I think, Craig got a couple great items from that as well.
I got, so for those of you who don't know, he did a Taylor Swift cover for the, Taylor Swift has a comic book. It's like a, kind of talks
She's
about
also
her
a
life
singer.
Like that. She's also a singer, I guess, is my understanding.
But we have her first appearance.
And yes, we do. He did a cover, and so one of the 3 books that I did bring was which you bought that for me. Thank you very much.
Well, no, that was funny because his handler was like, when you brought that out, he was like, oh man, we sold so many of these. I was like, yeah, I bought 3 of them.
Right, exactly.
I know.
So I had him sign that, and then he had a print of that of the Taylor Swift, and then he had that classic, like the Birds of Prey on the Rooftop.
Yes.
We picked that one up.
That beautiful satana.
Yep, and it was a satana that he had done. But the big get for me there was he did that North swimsuit issue. He did the 1 in 25 with Wonder Woman.
Yes.
He had worked with somebody, or maybe he did it independently even, but he had redone that in a foil. It was Wonder Woman 5.
Yes. So it was with Cooperation of DC, but he got to keep most of the proceeds on that. But yeah, and it was great because I
picked it up in a 9.9 signed.
9.9 signed,
which is cool.
And so my friend Jeff, who had never come there, and he has never bought. He hasn't bought a comic since we were kids. He does mostly collect editions and mostly Marvel, but he was like, I want this. He picked it up right there. I think we started a new trend. And also, I do like that he did. Pablo did each of those Taylor Swift covers. He did a different.
Like Midnight's was purple.
Each one was themed to a different one. Yeah, I got, of course, 1989 and my favorite T Swift album, Evermore. And I think you got Midnight's.
I did. I got Midnight's. Yep.
So, but there's nary a bad one in the bunch. But that was Pablo Villalobos' table. And already, it's like not even noon yet. We are riding high.
Well, and I think I stopped at Jeff DeCal's table on my way over to there. I met you at Villalobos because you were there. He was signing your books.
Yep, you guys came up.
So, for those of you who don't know Jeff DeCal, he does a lot of cover work, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Like, you need to look into it. He's done. So I think David Nakayama, which we'll have a story about him later, is currently doing the Catwoman A covers. But just immediately previous to this, like the hyper realistic, beautiful Catwoman A covers, those were Jeff DeCal.
That beautiful chiaroscuro.
Yeah, and he did.
Black and whites are next level.
He was doing Black Cloak.
Yes, he did the A cover for Black Cloak.
Yep.
Really quick though, I want to add a bit of anecdote here because, and this will come back later too. But when we first saw Jeff DeCal, he was saying to someone that we couldn't see. He was like, "Everything you're saying to me, I feel the same way about you." And he was being very effusive with his hands. And I was like, "Who is he talking to?" And I turned. And of course, it is the most beautiful man I have ever seen in my life. It is Jorge Jimenez had gone out of his way before his signing to come and find Jeff DeCal and tell him how much he liked Jeff DeCal's art. And Jeff DeCal was like giving it back. And it was just amazing to see these two great great A-list creators doing it. And
well,
again,
and it's fun because you're there doing that to them, and when you see that doing to each other, it's like
they admire
so
just each other just as much. And you have Jeff DeCalho. I don't know where he hails from, but Jorge Jimenez is from Spain.
He's from Miami.
Miami. Okay, so these people are not.
Florida,
they don't have a lot of interface.
Sure.
You know. So this is the chance, the opportunity to get to meet each other. And you're going to hear this many times, but Jorge Jimenez is one of the most beautiful humans I've ever seen in my life.
No, he's statuesque for sure.
It was ridiculous. He looked like a movie star.
Yeah.
But then you got a great print, a beautiful print.
It is insane. So he did one. There's only 10 of them. He made it limited to 10. I have number 1 of 10. It blew my mind. It was awesome. So I got I think I was maybe the first person at his booth.
What blew my mind is Jeff DeCalho did not think that he would be busy.
And that's the other thing. And I'm not to criticize booths and stuff like that. There's some people that come with an A game booth. Mm-hmm. And it's some people show up where they have a sketch pad, they anticipate they're just going to be
sitting around
and drawing all day, whatever.
Some work done.
DeCal had a portfolio that had some stuff in it, but he didn't have a variety. He had a sketchbook that he has, it's actually published. I got that, and then I got that Scarlet Witch print, which we're going to frame it, and I'm going to put it up in the shop. So if you guys are interested in seeing it, it'll be up here at some point.
Hand numbered and hand signed, 1 in 10, not a And we'll go because I'll say I think Frank Cho's is one of the best put together booths, but we'll have a story about that not mattering later on.
Yeah.
But we'll try to go at a semblance of a chronological order, or as we recall it, time's tricky. But it's also we were running on nothing but caffeine and fumes and adrenaline all day long, and it was a good thing too because there were people handing out free energy drinks and free coffee all day long, so it kept us going.
So I believe so. At that point, I think we were already ready for a pit stop because at the Tinian booth we had amassed 10 books. You had your 10 already signed.
Already by Hablo.
We already had at that
and Jose
point,
Luis Garcia Lopez. Yeah,
I think we already had at that point 10 to 15 prints.
Oh yeah, we were racking up prints like crazy. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing more nerve-wracking than carrying an 11 by 17 print with sweaty hands, trying not to get them damaged, trying not to get them bent. Wind is your enemy,
and they're signed, and you can't get those things anywhere else. Even if you get them, it's different. I know some places have some artists have an Etsy or something like that where they can, even if they sign it and they send it to you, it is not the same as I was here at this same point in time in the world that you were, and you signed it for me, that type of thing.
Dave Nakayama looked up at me with his beautiful brown eyes and signed this for me. That's a connection that you can't replicate.
Sure.
So we went and
back to the car.
Going back to the car is not. We'll just zip out to the parking lot. It is. You have to go across the building.
So think of it like an airport. Every time you leave, you have to go back through security. Mm-hmm. So
and it's in another terminal. That's where you parked.
Right. Yeah. So it's almost exactly that because you leave the floor, you go down a couple escalators like you would, past the baggage claim, out the front doors, across the street, down whatever else. You go into the parking garage, we drop stuff off the car, you kind of shuffle things around, and then we head back in. And I think at that point, that is where we looked through a few books on the way back to Artist Alley this time.
Yeah,
right.
A few books. I try to pull. I'm trying to pull all the Adam Hughes covers I can find, specifically all of them. And I got lucky. We got a few great finds, and then of course there's the great booths where people are slinging Detective 27 and
crazy books. Yeah,
action one. Yeah, but just to see them is something else. But
one spot had a Hulk 181 in a 9.8.
It's great. I've never seen one that high.
I mean, I don't know that anybody would ever buy it. I think they had $95,000 on it or something like that.
Which, if you're following at home, is overpriced by about $80,000. But it was cool to see.
It was very cool to see.
Unless my brother added a zero in his head, but I don't know.
No.
With numbers.
That was absolutely. I was there. It was crazy. So
that's insane.
So all those big
that
books
better come with Hugh Jackman.
No kidding. I mean, it was. I mean, I understand as far as rarity, but you can't get the extra $85,000 out of me for that point.
No,
that 0.5 bump.
That better come with Hugh Jackman. Did I use that?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I agree.
Well,
at least dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So we went through there. I saw a couple. What I was kind of looking for was I'm kind of hard on trying to get in the Crow at this point.
Oh yeah, I saw a few.
Pretty
nice copies,
but they were. I mean, the thing about cons that you need to prepare for too is somebody there will have the book you're looking for. Mm-hmm. They will have it for about double what it should be.
So my current grails are the Sandman 8 was not bad, but I want Poison Ivy's first appearance and Strange in Paradise #1 first print.
Yeah.
And those we found 2 Poison Ivies, and boy oh boy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can chop your hand off at the wrist if you're willing to do that.
Yeah. I found 2 copies of the Crow. They were both raw. They were both around $950, and I'd put them condition wise. That black cover's rough anyway. Mm-hmm. But these are like spine ticked all to hell and stuff. Like they were probably 7s.
$950.
$900.
It better come with Hugh Jackman.
They better come with Hugh Jackman for that price.
But it was great, and that was like
it's still fun seeing the books though. Like it's not like it's a down.
Oh, it is. It's great. It's great, and adding up in your head how great it would be to have enough money to do all that, and then putting all the books back.
Yeah. No, it man, these books. Look at all these books. All right. Not today. Yeah.
Not today. And I do, and I've got a few beautiful keys, and I'm happy with those. But and again, you'll find stuff there that you won't find anywhere else.
But people watching even in that area is a lot of fun. And I don't know if you did any of that, but I kind of stood back for a second, and the people that do go there and do have the money and do get those books, like seeing how happy they are, knowing that they're like they're getting that thing that we're looking for.
That's great. If I
saw somebody write the check for somebody did buy at a different booth at 181, and it probably wasn't the greatest.
Really?
Yeah, it probably wasn't the greatest condition ever, whatever else. But you could tell that dude was fucking stoked. Like,
no. I mean,
it's cool.
Like one of my biggest turnoffs is people's feelings. So.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's great to see. I was more upset about. I was looking for Zatanna covers, Zatanna and Wonder Woman covers, which is extremely close to the X's, and there was a guy at every booth I was at, the same guy with all of his stuff out, pricing each and every X-Man, and he looked so upset about everything that was happening to him and his life, and I was like, oh my, I'll just leave, dude.
Yeah.
It was bad. But then we made it back to Artist Alley, and this is where I met the effervescent, the beautiful, the extremely talented Chrissy Zulo Uminga, and she is the one that did the DC covers for Halloween.
Yes,
where they're all
like the picture frame, like
when they were children, and they were just terrific. She had all those, and she signed them for me, and we just had this great conversation. She was such a wonderful presence, a wonderful forthcoming person, and she told me she was going to be doing a lot more DC covers, which is always great to hear.
Yep.
And that's the thing about these that we found more and more is that you can approach these creators and they are so forthcoming. The best ones are so sincere. They're so happy to be there and they're happy to see you. And it's something that last year I didn't realize that. I didn't realize how democratized this medium is, and how you can just go up to these superstars and they're just as jazzed that you're there because we all love comics, and that's why we're here. But speaking of that, we did get next, I think, is when we saw one of our superstars that, not for us, that like one of the reasons that we were going there.
Yes. Patrick. You're talking about Patrick?
Patrick Horvath.
Yeah.
And he had this was his first con because this guy, as I told him,
completely busted.
I said, dude, you came out of nowhere last year. And he was like, I know. Patrick Horvath was one of the sweetest, kindest, most genuine people.
It was one of my favorite interactions.
One of the creators that I've ever seen. Yeah. He sat and he talked to me and he talked to Craig. Like, each one of us got like FaceTime, and he was like he wanted to know about you. He told me all about his next comic that's coming out, like the plot and everything, not as a pitch, not as a business thing, just as like he was excited about it too. And he's like, "Oh, you want to hear about it?" I was like, "Absolutely!" And it was so great. I wanted to ask him how Beneath the Trees ends, but
sure,
I'll wait. But he had all these beautiful variants. And I got the variant. I got the Giving Tree variant for Beneath the Trees.
He had some really creative ideas too. So that cover A that's so iconic now, as far as the dragging the bag and the blood trail, he had trading cards.
I thought you were gonna say bloody bag.
That would have been even better.
Cool.
He had those like glossy, high gloss like trading cards, and they were already pre-graded, so they came in like they were in mint.
Those were graded?
They're graded cards.
Man.
So it was that cover, but they were like trading cards. So I imagine like he could either do the whole thing or that could just be his thing. But I bought one of those in graded cards, and then he signed the casing on it. I brought my 1A. He signed that, and then they had the foil, virgin foil of that 1A cover.
Yes.
That I picked that up, and he's one of the ones where, because we were able to spend so much time, I think in the near future, we're going to get it lined up to where I think at the very least we're going to have him on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, and he seemed pumped again because like we were just excited, comic enthusiasts, and that's what he is too. And I'm glad that the book that he told me about though it is a book that he had already written, and it never came to print. And he said that after a few months ago, he was reached out to and asked.
Oh, hey Patrick, remember that book you had?
Yeah, I likened it to your hot ex that dumped you once she finds you with a new girl or guy. It's like, oh no, and now she's calling all of a sudden. But it was great, and he was just one of the kindest people. You would never have thought that he'd murdered so many humans.
Right.
Yeah.
You hear, but also the fun part is in the environment is I heard multiple other creators talk about Beneath the Trees favorably.
Yes.
In a way like, man, that book's great. Like, can you believe he does it all himself? Like, it's awesome.
And up to now he'd only illustrated for other creators, and even that only sparingly. And then this came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, and he he's a man fully formed. It was wonderful.
So if you have a chance,
he's a phenom. He's like Bo Jackson. He can draw and write. Yeah. So it was great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So and it's fun in there. It's crowded. I think at this point, we got food, which was I don't do the food on the floor.
Yeah, it was just okay. I mean, at that point though, through mistakes of navigation and wasn't a problem going there. I anticipated having. I wasn't planning on stopping before we got on the toll road where we get to into the loop where we get into Chicago and spaced it, so we didn't get to eat. Pretty much.
No,
it was pretty much honestly just coffee and stuff, but we powered through.
Yeah.
After Patrick, I think.
There were adult beverages there, cans for $11.
Yeah, it was
like,
weird.
Not unless it comes with Bo Jackson.
Right. Bo Jackson.
Bo knows good prices, and that was not one of them.
So I think is this around where
I'm trying to think because we got a couple more big things before we made a second pit stop because the second pit stop is what led into so some of the main events. I got to meet Eric Powell.
Yep.
And get a print. Eric Powell, he lives in the Tennessee woods and he writes these manic, incredible, crazy goon comics, and he seemed like it. He seemed like he was just barely on the edge. It was great. He was not very forthcoming, but he was very kind. He was very kind. Like not everybody has to be on for you. And he signed my goon print, and it was wonderful. I never thought I would get to meet Eric Powell, so that was a thrill. Nakayama was before this.
I was Nakayama because I remember.
Nakayama was directly after that. We dropped off the second stuff.
Yes, we loaded after that. That was when I did Arthur Adams as well.
Oh, you got to go off and meet Arthur Adams. So I got to meet my hero, and this is one of Craig, from my childhood, and this is one of Craig's.
So Jim Lee was probably number one as far as X-Men and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean,
for all of us.
But Arthur Adams, in particular, it's a silly thing that I do. It's in its particular book, but it's Excalibur, Mojo Mayhem. Got that book when I was 8.
Great comic.
It's a great comic. Arthur Adams drew it in its entirety. If you haven't read it, read it. Claremont wrote it. Arthur Adams did all of the art for it. It's one of those direct to graphic novel.
Turn into babies. And Kitty Pryde
is basically
the best X-Men. Has to keep them all safe and babysit. And they're attacked, of course, as happens to the X-Men. And it's a great issue. It's a great issue.
It is very, very fun. So I took him that actual copy and told him, I'm like, hey, this is one of my earliest memories. One of the very first books I got. One of my first, earliest memories of reading and things like that. I'm like I got this when I was 8. I'm like, I own a shop now. This is mind blowing. This is so cool to get to meet you and things like that. And then he was very cool. You could tell, and you can also tell, and when you've switched, those seasoned vets that have been to 40 of these, as compared to even people that have only been to a few. He was very very chill, very comfortable. He was like, "How's your store doing?" Asking questions like that.
Old pro, man.
Well. Because, I mean, the thing is you talk about the content with people, when you've got a short amount of time. If you have a length amount of, it was one of those things where you could tell he's like, oh, well, the shit I do only matters if you're doing okay. How are you doing?
Yes.
Right?
And there was a lot more of that from all the creators than I thought. They were giving up, you're the reason I'm here. We got a lot of that, which.
Right. No, and it's cool from that.
But it's like,
I'm
well,
glad
no,
that it's
like if the
viewed
comics
that
weren't so
way.
great, I wouldn't.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
and then so. Yeah, and he signed it. And then
He signed that, and then he also...
Craig came back crying. I don't say that as a bad thing, because after Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, I was making sure I looked fine before I got back there. I was overwhelmed.
It's just weird how it's a... You have those people that... It's like a time machine. You're like, I was 8 again. Like, I can remember.
I learned who Firestorm was. I learned who the Marvel family was because you drew them, and I didn't know who that was. I learned who like Mr. Mind was because of your drawings. Like you made me love comics.
Right.
And now you're here, and I'm telling you that you made me love comics.
Yeah.
It was something incredible. I mean, it's something you can't replicate. That's why we go.
It's so hard, like when. It's weird because they're meeting a stranger and you're meeting somebody you've known your whole life. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. That's a really good way to look at it. Yeah.
So it feels very one-sided and weird when you approach it. And there's a level of fear at the table because you're like,
yeah, especially because I kept calling Garcia Lopez dad.
Right. That makes it awkward.
Did not help it. Did not help it.
You know what I'm saying, though, right?
Absolutely. That's a really good way. Like, I've lived with you. You've been in my yeah.
So, we've been so at that point
I got to see Babs Tarr.
Yep.
Because I wanted my I had my Batgirl of Burnside, and I got to talk to her about that because I told her how much I loved that redesign, how much I loved what she did with it, and she said that would be her legacy.
Yeah.
And I was like, that it was very self-aware because Babs Tarr was very fun, very bubbly. It was great to talk to her, but she was very sober when she said that. Like,
sure.
And what a great legacy. Like, yeah, I perfected Barbara's outfit, even though it didn't stay that way, but DC gonna
it's
DC.
cool.
Yeah. And those are great comics too. But it's a matter of like when you go down Artist Alley, it literally is it's rows and rows and rows
I know what happened right before that.
of tables.
I remember now,
And
I'm sorry.
Every time you turn around, it's just like, oh.
Gavin Smith is what we did before that.
Gavin Smith.
That was what we kind of did right when we came back. So we went out of our way, for those of you who don't know, Gavin Smith, as of late, he's been on Mainline Turtles and IDW.
Doing covers and interiors.
Yep. He also has an upcoming, please pull it, especially with the information we're about to give you. He's doing the Turtles Alpha, which is the one that leads into the new series. And he wrote and drew one of the stories in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Black, White, and Green, number 2.
Lovely. It's Casey Jones centric.
Yes.
Casey Jones and Raph, I think.
Yes.
That's what he said. Yeah.
But he had prints. We bought a bunch of his prints as well. He had this killer Daredevil and Ninja Turtles one. But the cool thing is when you see the portfolio is like, so Gavin, you know him primarily from Turtles, but he opened this up and he can draw anything. He went to Kubert School.
He went to the Kubert School of Art. Yeah. Yep. And like just looking at his Daredevil, like Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was funny because my Austin bought that. Or loved that, and I don't think he realizes the connection between the Daredevil
right,
and Turtles, but they're so great, just both of them. Like, it doesn't matter if you know or not. Like, do you want to see Daredevil and Turtles together? Then here you go.
Gavin lives in Indianapolis. He's legit 2 hours away from us, and we've got it, not exact dates, but we've got it tied down to where he will be here in August.
Yes.
For a store signing. And, like I said, pull those books. That way we have them in, or you already have them, and then he will be here and he will be able to sign those. And
he's an incredibly gregarious, incredibly nice guy.
Nice guy.
And that's a thing that when these people are so kind and so fun to talk to, and they're that talented.
Well, he's an incredible. He's hometown for the most part. Like, and it's really important to like prop up those people that are like around. Like, he's basically our community.
Yeah, like we went through Gary. That's where Joe Jackson was born.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was awesome.
I feel like we spent a little bit of time there because we were kind of chatting about playing.
Oh no, you guys were there for a long time. I went down the row and saw a few more people. I saw Addy Granoff because he did a beautiful Rogue print that I was not going to lose. But it was so busy. Like Dustin Wynn was there. I didn't even get to stop at his booth.
And he did last year though. That's in my head,
that's true. It's the same with Kevin McGuire. Dustin Wynn, he did beautiful variants for the Wonder Twins, but he did all the he does a lot of the art for Jeff Lemire's books when Jeff Lemire doesn't. Jeff Lemire or Sorrentino doesn't do the interiors. He did all of Descender.
I thought about it. I kind of wanted to bring the entire run of that he did for the Night Terrors.
And those beautiful Night Terrors.
Like, it was another one of those situations where it's like, well, we talked to him, we saw him last year, and if I do that, I'm already committed to bringing in like 30 books with me, not to mention the ones that
I was already carrying two boxes full of books, and you don't want to be that guy. You don't want it to become work.
Yes.
And mine was bordering on it, but gosh, it's been such a good year for comics, and I really wanted Lobos to sign everything that we could.
But that was also, we did it quick and it was just done. It was
Yeah, we were getting in there. We were getting as much as we could. We made a stop. I do want to talk about David Nakayama while it's fresh. So David Nakayama's booth was next to I don't know the woman
in the Unknown Comics.
Yes, because he's been doing a lot of their
store
exclusive variants, yeah. And his booth was next to I was I'm not talking to David. I was listening to David Nakayama talk to the person he was signing for, and he was remarking he was doing this beautiful Rogue. And Craig's like, "Listen to this woman. Listen to her." And I looked over, and it's of course the woman who plays Rogue's voice in the '97 and the original, yeah. And it was incredible.
That's just her talking voice.
That is how she sounds, and she seemed like just the bounciest, most fun person ever. Exactly who you want to play Rogue, and it was great. But David Nakayama.
But I'm gonna take a moment. I'm sorry, like how surreal it is.
Yes.
As a kid, so you're sitting there watching him draw this, and you hear her voice at the same time. Like
she's wearing a Rogue.
Yeah, she's wearing like a Rogue. Like, yeah,
he's drawing Rogue, and there are two beautiful Rogue exclusive variants in front of us. And you're like,
she's like talking in Rogue, and you're like, this is insane.
It was fantastic. It was so great. But David Nakayama. That is
complete sweetheart.
A box of sweet chocolates, that man.
Yeah.
He was so... There was more empathy in that man than anything. I told him how great I thought he was, and he stopped and put his hand on his chest, and he said, "Thank you so much." Like, he was so touched, and he's like, "I want you to know, I want you to know, like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for people like you." And, like, he was talking to me and Craig, and it was so incredible. And then we got to pick out these beautiful prints.
Yeah.
I can't. Oh, I had him. Oh, he signed my my copy of the Human Target number 11 or 12 with ice on the cover, and he rendered ice in that beautiful negative space way that he does.
Yep.
And he signed it, and I can't wait to get that done because I love Ola's daughter, and it was wonderful. But Craig bought some prints because this guy had prints of all of the stuff, and if you've ever seen David Nakayama's art, it's incredible. It's just out of this world. But he had
it's very stylized, but also kind of real. It's hard to describe.
Again, there's a huge influence for sure, but I think there's a huge influence on any great cover artist nowadays. But he pioneered the negative space use, I'd say, or at least perfected it. But he had the best Dazzler I think I may have ever seen. And people who've been listening to the podcast for years know that Dazzler is one of my absolute favorite X-Men and or favorite characters. I think Alison Blair is amazing. And
the negative on that one is white. So there's a whole lot of white.
And it was the Disco Dazzler. It was the 1980 original design.
On roller skates.
On roller skates. It was great. What else did you pick up that he did?
The Rogue.
The Rogue, because you couldn't pass that up. I mean, and he's kind of
No. I lied. Poison Ivy.
No,
the Rogue were the books that I bought.
You got the Rogue exclusive because we both got Dazzler.
Yeah,
because once you see
Dazzler.
And a great and he's doing all the Poison Ivy B covers too. So
yeah, I mean, so basically what it ended up being, Shane and I would pal around because we got a lot of the same tastes too, and it's like he'd give the booth $150, I'd give the booth $150. So I know every single one of these people we've talked about made at least $300.
Yeah, and the fun part about that is like I don't have $150 to give, but Craig does. But I still did it. I told Craig and my brother that I fully expect my credit score to drop 2 or 3 points just after this. And you know what? There's better ways to waste it.
That was pretty intense. And there's another. I think it was wedged in between. I remember. I do apologize. We're just basically, like I said,
it's free association at this point. There are 2 main events that we're building up to.
Eddie Campbell. I forgot about the Eddie Campbell experience.
Oh,
that was insane.
Eddie Campbell, the
artist,
great artist who drew From Hell, my favorite comic of all time. So Craig brought a copy for one of our customers up. Asked him to sign it, and what did he do? What did this beautiful, gentle English chap do?
So, and it's another thing. It has to be cultural or something, even because it was like most of the time, like they'll sign their name. Maybe it was because of time, whatever else. But he was like, like he writes to, blah blah blah, and like a little message, and it was never asked, like what everybody else, when everybody else like charges for, a remark or whatever else they do, it's a thing. He just He sits down there. He opens it up. He does the whole signing of it, and then he like draws a full
the first
sketch of the first victim.
Yeah, he drew her in, and it was
on the inside
painting,
page,
whatever, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I was overwhelmed because like
it's crazy to just watch
he's
him
doing
work.
it, and Craig is just like points to like what he's, and I am overwhelmed just by seeing him. And like so, he gives the book back, and then we're all leaving. I just had to go back, and I was like, I can't buy From Hell for at 11th time, but I was like, I just want you to know that you drew what I consider the best comic in this medium.
It's
and
insane.
He was very at first. Again, he was skeptical, like all these old guys are, and then he saw it, and then he put his pen down and shook my hand, which was great. I have never seen a human look more British.
It was insane.
Eddie Campbell. He is
his
full
hat,
on. Yeah. Yes, his everything about him, his ticks, his facial hair, his glasses. He was basically the Union Jack.
Yeah, it was awesome.
He could be Captain Britain. But that was
wonderful experience.
He was, and then like right after that, I go around the corner. I'm with my friend Jeff, and I see Xander Cannon had his Kaiju Max stuff up, and I've read the first 2 Omni's worth of Kaiju Max from Oni Press, and he had the 3rd one there, and I don't have it, so I was like, hey, could you sign this for me? And he was like, that's like awesome, and he also drew one of the Kaijus for me. Not to take anything away from Xander Cannon, Kaiju Max is a great book. It's not From Hell, but I was very touched.
Sure.
Shout out to Xander Cannon, another really great guy.
It's not From Hell, but
it's great. It's Kaiju's going to jail because they wreck shit, and they have to work out their sentences. It's a really good book if anybody wants to read it and Oni Press is a great publisher. And yeah, Xander Cannon's a great creator. Maybe one day he will be. He'll make us From Hell. But it was really cool. Like, hey, I got one too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it was just an insane experience to see.
It's you have there's the 2 main events you're talking about, but then there's also I have a 3rd one actually that was a lot of fun.
By all means.
But
I wish you'd quit leaving me in suspense and tell me.
No, we're not there yet though. Because there was a lot of. Did we go back and kind of look at books again or something? Or what happened?
Yes, we went and looked at books. There were 2 long stretches where we were going through back issues.
So
because I went and bought a Dazzler. I got that. So that's because I bought another. I bought another copy of Dazzler's #1 of her line before we saw Nakayama. Like I'm always looking out for Dazzler comics too.
Yeah, no, it was so after Nakayama. We had the other thing with Nakayama was cool is Dimitri in the shop. For those of you who know Dimitri, that kid,
boy, he
got
hard.
every single cover that exists for Gargoyles #1, and I think the 1 in 1,000 was the Virgin Nakayama.
Yes,
and he sent that along with me, and Nakayama signed it. So,
man, can you imagine?
Yeah, and it's very, very cool.
Not unless you're Joe Jackson.
I was excited that we were able to do that for him. It was just. I don't know.
What? No. He called. He called
because
he was watching the shop and he had a question for Craig, and we were talking to David Nakayama.
Yeah,
and
I'm getting your book signed right now. Really? No shit.
It was great. It was great.
Really. Oh, that was funny at the Nakayama thing too. To reinforce what you already talked about. Remember the guy? He said he lost his cell phone. He's like, "Oh no!"
No, he was so concerned. Like, and he was, "Oh no, we'll call it. One of us will listen for it." It's like, man,
so
David Nakayama, don't make his problems yours. He was such a nice person. He was such a great, overflowing with. And him and Patrick Horvath were just these very great presences. Like these are humans that I'd like to know more. Like to know better. Yeah, it was that aspect was great. Also, going to these there were, if you're looking for regular back issues and even like minor keys, like I was looking for instance, I was looking for Adam Hughes covers. They had almost all of them that I wanted.
Sure.
And for relatively good prices. The only thing is like they just add up.
It's the monster books that they overprice. Like the regular ass books are usually pretty decent.
And it's it's what it is. But it's still fun. It's still fun to hunt. And again, if you're trying to put together a run, there's very few places better for it.
Sure.
Yeah. So
I think at this point, I mean, and I think we've missed a few, but as far as getting to the highlights,
because we had to go drop off for a second time. That's how much we were loaded up. And we came in, and when we came back in
line,
that's when we did Nakayama, because we knew that the biggest line, and I think we'd hoped that it would go down, but
it just never did.
Chip Zdarsky and the aforementioned Dreamboat, Jorge Jimenez, were signing. Their booths were next to each other.
So the line, okay. So to describe, for those of you that are going possibly, rows O and P were absolutely knockouts. Like, okay, so Chip Zdarsky is directly across from Tim Seeley and Jenny Frison. Immediately next to Chip Zdarsky is Jorge Jimenez, who is immediately next to Frank Cho.
Yes.
Who's immediately next to yada, yada, yada. Like, it was just...
Yeah, and I mean, so we were down with OP.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. So at that point, it wasn't going to get any better. We just jumped in line.
Might as well.
And it was about
and it didn't,
2 hours?
at least 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for about a half hour, we kept going backwards.
So at the back of the line, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is this not move at all? Yeah, it felt like we were moving backwards. And then you sit for a while and you wait and you get a little closer. You're like, oh,
yeah,
he's drawing a picture for every
That's what we didn't realize that you could, for $40, Chip would draw a little, I think like a 5x7 or an 8x10 of whoever he wanted. For $50, he would draw the same thing for a character of your choice. So while we were mean mugging everybody that went up there, I finally got my chance, and I went up there, and I am just overflowing with praise. The thing about Chip, though, you cannot catch him off guard. You can't flatter him too much. You can't say anything that'll surprise him. He put down his pen, looked at me full in the eye, and was just like, he started just going off into these wonderful stories, these wonderful anecdotes, these wonderful, like, oh no, I'm so glad that you're here. This is amazing. And I would like ask him like, so what do you think of this? And he was just like, oh, well, let me, blah, blah, blah. He was incredible, and it was great. So he was charging $10.
Despite his line, he treated it like everybody else
and every person
does,
got,
even though he's got
you got 100% of his time, his attention, and his effort. He was charging $10 per signature unless you wanted it personalized. Right. And then it was free, and that was great. So I was like, well, sign it to me, Chip. I told him how great I thought all of his comics were. I asked him if it was a lot of pressure doing Daredevil and Batman at the same time, and he's like, no, because it was so much fun. Right. And that is great. And then he was like, and they're such different characters, and that was what was most of the fun. I was like, thank you so much, because like,
tell him what he said about Mark Russell. Well, how he came up to that.
I was like, well, so many people, because and this is a thing of mine, is like people always say that Daredevil is the Marvel Batman and vice versa, and that is just absolutely incredibly wrong. And he got it. He told me he was like yes, because Batman is sure of himself, and Matt is anything but. And I'm like, that's why you write the books, man. Right. We were talking about. I said of creators, he's up there for me. I was like, you're up there with Jonathan Hickman and Mark Russell, and he stops. He's like, Mark Russell his face should be on postage stamps. He's like, that's how good he is. And I've seen that. Mark Russell may not be the huge seller that everybody is, even though he does do very well. He doesn't do Chip numbers or Hickman numbers, but he does very well. But all these creators,
I think it's a matter of time and exposure.
They stop when they hear Mark Russell. They all give it up. Like,
game respects game.
Game respect game.
And Zdarsky's already got that. He's got that tongue-in-cheek. Like, he's not full satire because of the books he's working on. But if he did, he could. That's the type of stuff he'd be just as
absolutely.
good at. Right. So,
and I told him how much I love Newburn and Capterra, and it was great. So then, he asked me who I wanted him to draw, and I said Damian Wayne. I didn't want to do Batman. So I was like, maybe a Robin. Damian's my favorite. But then right before he starts, I was like, he was looking up a reference on his phone, and right before he starts, like, oh my gosh, drop me Howard the Duck, please. And he was like, well, absolutely. And he drew him from memory. Right. And he didn't just do it. Like, he had a brush, he had an ink brush, and then he had a shading brush, and he gave you a full on thing. Yeah. It had a caption and everything, and he signed it, and it was an absolutely incredible experience.
So everybody bitched in line up to the point where you could see what he was doing, and then everybody also chose to do that, and that's why the line is as long as it is.
Yes, and now I had a pretty great conversation with a lot of creators that day, but Chips, I think I went a little too long. Personally, I think I went longer than anybody that I was waiting for. I feel like me and Chip were becoming close friends, because next thing I know, my boys are his handler, this wonderful woman who
she was awesome,
doing
too.
A great job keeping everything in line, making people pay in advance, so everything was ready. But next thing, Brad, Craig, and Jeff and Austin are like, she said, just go over there if you know him, like, get him away,
get him going.
I could not be torn away, and it was just absolutely great. And just talking to Chip Zdarsky, and I feel like I can call him Chip now. It was such. I mean, that was the highlight. One of the best highlights of the day and of the year and of my like comic reading life because of how forthcoming, like he would, every time he would like answer a question, he would put down his brush and look at me and like, oh, like nothing else mattered but like me at that moment, and that's what he did for everybody.
Yeah, it was.
But I like to think that like for me he meant it more.
Well, yeah, of course, naturally.
And then you can tell your trip story in a second, but I just because this all happened boom, boom, boom. Right next to him was Jorge Jimenez, and I gave him my books, and he flashed me this $1 trillion smile, and I told him, Mr. Jimenez, I just want you to know that when I saw you and your beautiful wife or your beautiful partner, my first thought was, wow, they are just as good looking as they are in their pictures. And he smiled, and he didn't puff out his chest. His chest is just that massive and beautiful. And he signed all my books, and he shook my hand, and he said thank you. And everybody else was getting a selfie with him. I wasn't gonna do that. I'm a strong Fort Wayne 8. I'm not trying to invite that comparison with this. This guy is a Miami 10.
A Fort Wayne 8.
Yeah, like it was ridiculous. And I said it to a Chip as well. He was like, I know. Like, why would anybody?
Why do you want to take your picture?
Why would anybody get a selfie with this guy? And then my next thing, because he was right next to him, so. I was hurrying, and then I had 2 books by.
Well, you had to tell him the reason why you were trying to get all 3. That book in particular was.
Well, I had one that was written by it was Batman that was written by Chip.
Interiors by Jorge.
And then it was a variant. It was a beautiful Selena ballpoint pen variant by Frank Cho, and Frank Cho was right there. So I get the Frank Cho's things, and I put my stuff down, and he has his coat on, and he is like, I won't say angry, but he was just like, I'm wore out.
Frank had a bad couple days in a row. And
he's like, I am taking off. And his handler, this very nice woman, sees that I had already I'd had my books out, and she's like, could you please sign his? He's right here. And he kind of had a look of resignation, and he was signing them really quick. And then he sees that Catwoman variant, and he was like, this is one of my favorite covers. Mm-hmm. And it was like kind of softened him up a little, but he was definitely in a hurry to the point where I didn't even get a chance to buy any prints. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying he was being rude or anything like that. He had clearly had a bad time. We have all had that moment. He was not rude to me. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. And I really, really appreciated.
I feel like if you really, social media wise, I think he was just having a rough go.
He was having he didn't do any, he absolutely, there was no one immediately after me. He didn't shunt everybody off. Craig and Brad did not get to have their stuff signed, but it's like, he was done. But he was very kind to me. Not kind, but he was very professional, and he did soften up with the book, and he did sign all my books, and I really, really appreciate it. Frank Cho is absolutely top 3 artists working right now for me. It was great, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to have him sign my books. I didn't have the opportunity to buy any prints. He was done. But I'm sure that if he ever comes to a con that I can go to again, I can't wait to see him and tell him I appreciate that. Also, I was coming off of the 2 nicest people there, the 2 most forthcoming, most giving people there.
Yeah.
So, but it was absolutely it was about 30 or 40 minutes of the most intense joy and satisfaction that I have ever felt, and I mean that in a clean way, except with Jorge. I can't. The guy is so gorgeous, man.
He is. He's a good looking dude. Which is cool because that was the second time we saw him. Because we already talked about that, the Jeff DeCal story. How they were sitting there oh man, you're so cool. And he's like, no, you're so cool. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then so with Chip. In line, while we're waiting in line for Chip, I happen to look over and I see Dinesh from Bad Idea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. The editor of Bad Idea.
CEO, publisher.
CEO.
Yeah. So I walk over to him and I'm like, hey, Dinesh, what's up? Because I told him, sorry, we're not going to be able to make, because they have the big Bad Idea today, where we're recording on Saturday, the day afterwards. Mm-hmm. They have a big panel there. We're like, well, we're not going to be able to make it out there. To see and whatever else. He's like, oh, well, it was very cool because we were basically just talking business. He was asking how the shop was doing and things like that. Because I was in communication with him quite a bit because I don't know if people remember, but when they did this big contest over the last summer, one of our customers was in first place the entire time.
Yes.
The expectation was pretty much that they were coming to Fort Wayne at some point, and they did this last contest thing. Where somebody just got an overwhelming amount of points and it went in a different direction. So, and he remembers because he was excited about coming to this badass Firehouse comic shop.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't?
So we end up chatting for a bit, and he's looking around anyway, he's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to be at this hotel bar at 6 o'clock, show up there and we can keep chatting, whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. So after the chip line and things like that, that took for the rest of the time. After that, we went back to the car one last time to drop everything off.
After Jenny.
Sorry?
After Jenny Prison.
Yes. And then we go to that hotel bar, and we end up going there. And sure as shit, like, wasn't bullshitting. Like, he showed up, and we sat there and talked for like an hour. And he was very much like.
Now this is the hotel restaurant and bar at the Chicago Comic Convention.
It is completely packed with people. Like,
it was
in cosplay.
Nothing but cosplay.
It was hilarious.
It was absolutely great. And I made the joke that it looked like the Star Wars cantina. And as soon as I did,
I think
Han Solo walked right by me, and I was like,
"That was classic."
Oh goodness, kid. No, it was great. It was great. But again,
it was just another one of those times where you talk to somebody that's like, I don't know if. I'm not going to use words titan in the industry or whatever else, but he's pretty well known.
He brought back Valiant in 2012, and it was great. Man, those are great books. Those are great years for Valiant.
So there's like a lot of stuff, a lot of people doing a lot of stuff.
And anybody who's a Valiant fan, we've been hurt. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And just talk to somebody about comics at the comics level.
Who likes comics. Everyone's there because they love comics.
And
that's the thing. Like, that's the shared interest that we all have, and that's a beautiful thing. From like Chip to Jorge to, all of them, they're there. Also, I don't know. Chip was across. Chip, Jorge, and Frank Cho were directly across from Tim Seeley and Jenny Frison, and I'm like, one, that's poor planning because those are going to be lines all day. But that's the '98 Bulls, and I know you're at home thinking, is he going to make a Phil Jackson joke? Is he going to do it one more time? I don't know.
We'll see.
You'll have to listen on.
We have a little bit more time. It's completely possible.
Yeah.
So I think
a little bit more time. You're not going anywhere.
Brad and I were talking with Dinesh for about 45 minutes or so, or an hour.
Austin, Jeff, and I went and sat. We took up some poor waitress's 3 seats in her section. We were sitting next to the saddest Spider-Man I've ever seen, replete with the spider car. Why would he need a car? Like if Peter Parker has a car, it's like it's an old Datsun,
Yeah,
he's got like a beat up Honda Accord. It's not like this awesome thing with. I just don't. Who would make it for him?
Dune buggy.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But Superman had a ship, so whatever.
We at that point, that leads us to the entire reason why we even go to this.
Left. Yeah, Austin, Jeff and I left because. Afterwards, for shop owners, which Craig and Austin and me are equally one. I'm here. Craig and Austin are the shop owners, so they got they're invited to a mixer. Well, you know what? You explain. I'm sorry.
So no, you're fine. So so every year at least that I've been involved, which this is the third one. At C2E2, most of the time, Lunar will have an event. Lunar being the distributor of Distillery, Image, DC is the big one. Oni Press, Drawn and Quarterly now.
Yes, it keeps, Source Point.
Keep getting a lot of different, publishers.
Silver Sprockets.
Silver Sprockets.
Yeah.
You go to this. They have there's meeting. And they give the feedback basically as far as oh, we've heard you this past year. This is what's happening. This is what we're doing. These are some plans. Not revealing too much, but just kind of like a yearly catch up. So we're all wrapped up in the Dinesh thing, and we start on our way, and I get a text from Shane that says, Tynan is here. I was like, what? So for context of that, last year at the Lunar event, and this is the thing that's really cool about going to this, is last year it was just one of the rooms that you would typically rent out for one of the panels, and Lunar has it, and it's all set up, and all the chairs are up there and everything like that. And last year it was Kyle Higgins of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Radiant Black.
And delicate fawn person, Dan Mora.
And Dan Mora.
As the fastest, most talented interior artist and cover artist in comics. He was great. Yeah, that was great. So we were waiting, and I went up to the table, and our friend from Lunar, Taylor was there, and he was like, arcade, and I was like, oh man. And the one book I didn't get signed, by the way, was a Department of Truth variant with Tupac on the cover. It was the one book I didn't get signed, and it was funny, and I was like,
you would have brought it.
Yep. But we were checking in, and I was like,
oh my gosh, that's James Tynion. He was just wandering around the hallway, and then Taylor was like, oh, that's great because he's the speaker. And then that's when I texted you. Like, it was incredible.
Yep.
Incredible. So yeah, we go in, and we were obviously, if you didn't remember from the narrative, that's been very well structured. We were starving.
Yes.
And they had a bunch of deli meats and vegetables.
Cheeses.
It was like a charcuterie board massacre, and we filled up on it. And then there was also an open bar, which I filled up on that, and it was great. We got a lunar tumbler.
Yep.
Rocks glass and lunar
T-shirts.
Yeah, it was great. And then they did this great presentation, and then afterwards we had a speaker before.
Yes. So
Another surprise one
that was there. I wish they would have, let us know or else. But Tony Fleeks and Trish Forstner were there. So they talked about
Tony Fleeks was on the panel. Trish Forstner was like 2 seats behind me, just like hanging out with her friends. Like, hey,
it's so cool. So they talked about Farrell and things like that, and basically, Fleeks was like
Fleeks was awesome.
Yeah.
People wondering at home is like, is Fleeks cool? Yes,
he's very cool. So
very cool.
He's doing Uncanny Valley right now. He's doing Local Man, obviously, with
doing
Tim
the art
Seeley.
for Tim Seeley, yeah.
And then obviously Farrell, and very, very cool. And for all these people that we brought up, we've got plans in the works with them, is like whether it be podcast or actually coming to the shop and things like that. And it's just going to take some planning and scheduling and stuff like that. But like Tony, I think, is very serious. Like, we'd already kind of thrown out dates as far as that goes, but we were kind of thinking
Tony to you, Mr. Fleeks, if you're nasty.
Sorry, Tony to me, Mr. Fleeks, if you're nasty. Probably September, October-ish for showing up in store.
Yep. Big supporter
with Trish or whatever else.
These guys want to support the shops.
Yes.
And that's great.
So a few irons in the fire there. So we go through the whole presentation. It was fun. It was very well done. The Silver Sprocket thing was entertaining.
They were a hoot.
Yeah.
They really were. And their books look great. They had the new Emily Carroll book, which I didn't realize that was published by them. But what a great get.
And it ended pretty much with Tynion talking about.
There was a keynote from James Tynion, and
just talking about his stuff.
This guy was in command of the audience. He was in command of the narrative. I was
surprised at how not uncomfortable he was just talking to a group.
I thought about. I think he was talking to some comic fans about comics.
Sure.
And this guy is a comic fan, and he was talking about his books. And his business savvy is incredible.
Yeah.
It's very he was great. And he was talking about what the books he has coming up, some announcements, Department of Truth coming back, Somebody's Killing the Children coming back, the Deviant still coming.
Yeah.
It was great. And then he some revealing stuff. He said the Nice House on the Lake was the book that he felt was the not close to him, but said the most about it. Yeah, the most personal. And that's of course getting a sequel.
Nice House by the Sea.
Nice House by the Sea. A lot of stuff going on.
And in that meeting, it was cool. I got to catch up. Just a little plug for them. I talked with Kelly and Chris from Buy Me Toys. They're in South Bend area. I spoke to her quite a bit, asking, just seeing how things were going and stuff. They were actually, this year, they're nominated for a Spirit Award. So if you guys feel so inclined or you're able to, vote for them, they're a great shop in South Bend. Mm-hmm. So I got to talk with her a little bit here. But the icing on the cake of everything, an entire day of just meeting heroes and doing all this stuff is basically everybody is kind of filtered out. I don't know if they were tired or what. We got 30 minutes of hanging out with Tynion just by ourselves.
Yes, we got to have so much interface with James Tynion, and he was being very candid, very, very, very forthcoming, very funny.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Funny guy. He's engaging as hell. Turns out he's a good storyteller. Yeah. Who would have thought that Eisner Award winner James Tynion would be a great storyteller? And he told us what the next arc of Department of Truth is going to center around. I won't spoil it here because I don't know if we're supposed to.
That's not.
But it's going to be great. Keep the polls open for that.
Some plans as far as something, as far as where it's going and how they're the things are arranged like that. It's very well planned out.
That and World Tree. He spoke long-term plans for World Tree.
But the second half of it was talking about Ultimate Spider-Man, and that was the fucking cool thing.
We mentioned that in the shop.
World Tree's number 2 as far as
World Tree has the most polls, short of by a large margin, Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman, and I don't know.
He just rattles off his face. Read the date issue.
Didn't light up, but he said, I am so fine with that on a personal level. If you're gonna lose to anybody, it's Jonathan Hickman doing Spider-Man. And then he nerded out about the series, and then we talked together about the issue 4, the new one that just came out. It's like, this guy loves comics. He's still reading. Like, he was just a guy. He was just one of the guys.
Yeah, and it was just like, okay, James Tynion. Well, see you later. Like
2023 Eisner Award winner for Best Writer, James Tynion.
Yeah, and he's got a bunch of exciting stuff
we
going
didn't mention
on.
Blue Book. I mean, he's got several books, and there's no loss of quality. My friend Jeff was like, "How does somebody have that many stories and doesn't get overwhelmed?" I'm like, he doesn't just have that many stories and that many books out, but they're all excellent. There's no loss of quality in any of these books.
And it's because I think he's gotten himself to the point where he can set a schedule. Like, we talked about this in the store today. He doesn't take breaks. It's just he has a book that doesn't come out for 3 months because he's working on the other books. So it's like he's never not working, but I think he needs to like pull a couple of them back so that, you know, he can have time to like write those other stories. But I found out, and I didn't know what the circumstances were. Like, I think that Simmons was just busy for Department of Truth.
And that was
like the holdup as far as that goes. But anyway, I mean, it was an incredible day full of just like hanging out, like the crew, like it was an amazing vibe. Like all of us were cool and like, easygoing, and you know, if somebody wanted to go to this table, we'd wander to the table because there's definitely something there that's going to be cool, and just like hanging out and meeting all these people, made a bunch of connections. I think so. I'm really hoping that I'm fairly confident. There's a lot of
we got some great store signings coming up, some great visitations, some other people that we're planning that can't say much about, but it's big things for the store.
Yes, and we are planning on going. Like, I'm not going to miss a year at this point. I mean, this one, honestly, it's going to be tough to beat. But
it was one of the best days that I can remember.
We hit every signature we wanted. We talked with everybody that we wanted to. I felt like we got there in a weird, like, it was just cosmically it worked out where we would walk in where there would only have like 1 or 2 people at the booth because you move around. And we got to spend the time with people because there are times it goes through ebbs and flows where like
we caught Horvath at a great point. I passed him once or twice where he had too many people.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't spend all the time, but we got him at a great time where we got to really have some interface with him. I did not see Tony Fleeks's booth while we were there until we saw him at the on the panel, and then
because a lot of those are weird. This is the thing you have to look forward to. I guess this is tour guide. A lot of the times, so they'll announce them as guests there. But sometimes they are actually with a merchandise vendor's store. So that was what was Nakayama. We walked through twice before we found out he was at the Unknown Comics.
Because I didn't realize that either. Yeah.
So sometimes, and I think Fleeks and Forstner were at one of those booths.
That would make sense. And then of course there was the last minute
Sozumika.
Because she wasn't on the guest list, the advanced guest list, and then early in the day I saw this beautiful woman walk by. I was like, that looks so much like Sozumika. Turns out she was last minute entrance, and she has a booth right now, and it's would love to see her again. But we got to meet her last year, and she was great. And she signed her gorgeous prints for us. But she just did those great women's history cycle for DC. But you know what? There's always next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess we can close this out with, we brought those prints home. We have some of them like available in the store. We have some of the books and stuff we brought back. So if you come in, if you're interested, you can take a look around at them. But if not, I mean, don't come in this weekend. Don't come to our store. Go to C2E2.
We'll see you next week.
It's if you can, do it. It's worth your time.
Spend the cash. Support these creators.
And that's the cool thing is, like, I think at least they get it directly. So if you want to support these people, this is a good way of doing so.
Yeah.
And the merch booths and stuff.
And I can tell you, they all take cards, but they would much rather give you cash. Which
yes,
girl, same.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah. I mean, I can't afford to be paying the man on all these transactions. But I had to go to Pablo Villalobos and ask for
a refund. There you go.
And of course he did it. He was great.
That's awesome.
He's not just good at art. He's also good at giving refunds. But
you have anything else?
No, I do want to point out that I perfectly set up both a Phil and Janet Jackson joke that I did not pay off. So you guys are going to have to tune in next week.
Okay. To be continued.
Oh, yes. But that's it for us. Until next year.
We will see you. Bye.
Bye.